So the first step in checking your vehicle's brake fluid is to locate where the brake fluid goes. So you're going to be looking for the brake master cylinder and the brake fluid reservoir. Pretty much in every vehicle, it's going to be located pretty much right in front of the driver's seat here, pretty much right in front of where the brake pedal is. So you're going to go to the back here, and it's going to be pretty much up next to the firewall here. And so this is what you're going to be looking for. So there's the brake master cylinder, and there's your brake reservoir. So the easiest and quickest way to check your brake fluid is just to look on the side here. So if you look here, it's just going to have a min line and a max line. So pretty much all you're going to want to know is if it's in between there, you're pretty much good to go. And just make sure it's never actually above this max line, because when the vehicle heats up, your brake fluid will heat up as well and it will expand. So it needs this extra space here to expand, and if it's overfilled, it could blow your cap off here or blow a seal somewhere down below. So now if your brake fluid comes back and you see that it's actually low on here, pretty much you got two things that may be wrong with it. One is you have a leak somewhere in the system. Somewhere in the hose line, you'll have to check some hoses and see if there's any brake fluid leaking. And two is your brake pads are really low. And what that means is, so there's calipers down in by the brake pads. So when the brake pads wear down, they're pushed out farther. And when they're pushed out farther, the caliper allows more brake fluid to go down into to push the brake pad out. So when you put new brake pads on, the calipers get pushed back, therefore more fluid actually gets pushed back up here. So before you go and fill this up, check your brake pads to make sure they're not low, because if they're worn out and you replace them, your brake fluid will actually go back up. So just make sure you're not overfilling the brake fluid. So after checking your brake pads now and your brake pads are still in good condition, then that pretty much means you have a leak somewhere, and you're going to have to fix the leak first, and then next you're going to have to fill this back up with brake fluid. So once you got everything fixed and you make sure there's no leaks anywhere in the system, you're going to open this up and you're going to fill it back with brake fluid. But there's a specific way you're going to have to do this. So first off, you're going to make sure that you clean this cap off. Just get a rag and clean all this dirt off, because if there's any dirt that gets into this into the reservoir, it will contaminate the brake fluid and it'll pretty much allow your vehicle to not stop as well as it should. Even the littlest amount of dirt, if gotten into here, could get down into the master cylinder and could cause the internal seals of the master cylinder to fail, and therefore you'd have to replace the master cylinder, which is a bigger job and going to be more expensive for you. So now once you got the cap cleaned off, make sure you're filling it with the right fluid. So if you look here on the top, it usually says what you need to put on there. So this truck is a DOT4, so most vehicles will either be a DOT4 or a DOT3. So make sure you get that kind of brake fluid. And as I said before, just make sure to not overfill it. Overfilling it will damage this severely. And one more little tip of information here. Make sure you do not leave this cap off for too long. Or if you have the brake fluid container, do not leave the cap off that for too long. Brake fluid is actually considered hygroscopic, which means it loves moisture. So if you leave it open, moisture will get into it, and the moisture alone will pretty much cause corrosion into all the hydraulic parts of the brakes and will pretty much ruin it. And it's been pretty much shown within about 15 minutes it could pretty much damage this, and you'll have to repair it all. So if you're replacing your fluid, just make sure to do it fast, don't leave anything open, and make sure to get the seal back on it tight. So one last thing here, brake fluid is actually very toxic. So if you use gloves, if you have any rags that has brake fluid on it, or if you have any brake fluid left over, make sure you dispose of it correctly. There should be a waste management site in your area that you can call and see if they will take care of it for you.